Hey guys, Matt and Mike.
IronTrap Garage Podcast.
We are doing our visual one. So for anybody that hasn't checked in with us on our podcast stuff, we've now started doing podcasts every week,
Every Sunday.
every Sunday. What we're doing now is we're alternating. Every Sunday you can hear a audio podcast. So if you go to Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts at or listen to music on, you can usually find our podcast. We're putting one out every Sunday, and then what we're doing now is we're still keeping to what we had previously done, where we're doing like every other week we're doing a visual podcast.
We're going to try our absolute hardest.
It may be hard as lives get busy. But that's what we're trying to do. What we found is some of these discussions, there's so much cool visual stuff that when we talk about things, whether it's even just like with my father, we did the back and forth with he and I talking. I think it helped. It added to it.
Yes, definitely.
Some of them, we have a lot of reference photos to put up, so I think that helps if you're watching. If you like to watch, that is a way to do it. And also, we recognize that some people don't want to do the podcast thing, so they can watch every now and then. So that's what we're doing. So if you do the podcast thing, you can subscribe. Definitely drop us a review on Spotify or any of the other areas you listen to podcasts. It just helps us get more listens.
Yes, and also send us any ideas.
Yeah.
If you have a topic that you'd like us to bullshit about for an hour, please let us know, because at some point we're going to run out of original ideas for ourselves and be like, we need something to talk about.
Yeah, that might be it might be a little hard after a while,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of we've talked about it in every podcast, that a lot of these ideas are organic. They just come from random conversations or things we think about, and that's what these topics come from. So
Before we get into today's
Yes.
topic, this week is Carlisle. The video comes out on Sunday.
Okay.
Carlisle starts Tuesday, or Wednesday's official for the public. N3 to 6 are our spaces at Carlisle. We are right by gate 1. If you see the Coker tire truck, we are on the back side of that truck. So just turn the corner and you'll find us. Then Hershey's the week after. C4T is the row, where spaces 25 to 27. Light pole 33. Come find us.
yeah, we should be around. Just for anybody that gets annoyed, I don't hang out at the spaces. So if you're coming to say hello or show me a photo of your project car or hook me up with your hot granddaughter.
He
or
might come
daughter,
back to the space for
I
that.
might come back for that. Don't tell Kate, but I might come back to see what my options are.
Do I need to cut that out of the podcast?
No, I don't care. She's going to laugh. She knows I'm an idiot and nobody else would want to hang out with me. So
Go visit Steve.
Yeah.
Steve's going to be there all week.
we do, for anybody that does, in all seriousness, if you do want to come and visit and talk to us, the best bet, if you're around, is to wait till the end of the week. So like a Hershey, Thursday is kind of like the last day for us. So Thursday I usually hang out at the booth. For most of the day, I don't really leave the booth. So if you'd like to come chat, same thing at Carlisle. If you come on Friday or Thursday afternoon, there's a better chance that I will be there. I'd love to talk to everybody, but I'm also still an addict, and I'm going to be searching dumpsters.
Anyway, you are still in that. Sorry, we got interrupted by the. Today has been full of interruptions. This is our second podcast, and we've taken 47 breaks.
We have a community center next door, and their dumpster guy, trash guy, he brutalizes those dumpsters. We have a dumpster here, and the dude's just like one quick bang, puts it down. Theirs, it's like he smashes it like 30 times. I don't know what he does, but so if you hear some noises, we apologize. But that's the reality of this.
I'm going to try my best to edit it all out.
So if you're an addict like I am, you can understand that I like to go out and hunt for parts. And also, it's, a lot of people I only see once a year. So I try and go to different spaces and spend time talking to people. So I apologize if I can't catch up with everybody,
Yes.
but we will definitely do our best. We'll have a little bit of merch at the booth. We're not as stacked full this year. We've been a little distracted with the moving process, that we didn't get our order in quite in time for the event. We will definitely have merch there. Just if we're missing a size or style, you could always place an order with us and we could ship it to you when we get it in. We're due to get a huge shipment in before the Black Friday madness.
Yeah.
It's just not before Hershey and Carlisle. So that's our spiel for events coming up. Come say hello, check out all the cool parts we have. Might even have Dad's Daily. We mentioned it in another podcast. We're probably going to be selling that, so that may be for sale at Carlisle. We don't know yet, but we're going to be floating that out there for sale because my dad hasn't really driven it, and he and I talked about it, and he thought it'd be a good idea to get rid of it because it's taking up space, and I've been paying insurance on it. And maybe we'll put something else together for him that's a little more practical now that he lives 3 hours away.
He did drop some hints in his podcast. Early rancheros, falcons.
I don't like them. That's the problem.
It's not about what you like, though. It's about what he likes.
I have to buy it and pay for it.
Can we put a flathead in a ranchero? Is that sacrilegious?
I just wish we could do an earlier one.
I know.
I think that's going to be another one that he forgets how small they are, and he has a little bit of a belly on him, and he may have a difficult time getting in a little ranchero falcon. Thanks, Moon. So we will have to see, but that's if you're interested in a affordable hot rod that's pretty well sorted, just needs some perfecting, you can hit us up.
Yep.
We'll have that for sale. It's going to be sub $10,000 probably is realistically what it's going to be. So be a great affordable way to get into a pretty well sorted old early Ford. So that's our sales pitch.
Yes.
So today's
topic's kind of interesting. It's kind of a pipe dreaming conversation. Matt and I were talking the other day. What are the top? We said 5, but we're going to be talking for way too long. So, what are the top 3 cars if you had unlimited budget? Would you buy?
Yeah, we're not some of this stuff, at least for me, cars that could be at least 1 or 2 of the cars are on my list are could be obtainable.
Yeah, mine are too. I'm not. All of ours aren't like $1 million high end early cars. The majority of them are quite obtainable. It's just
you'd have to sell. For me, some of these cars, probably all the cars on my list are obtainable, but I may have to sell like every car I own, and I'd have one. All my parts, all my cars, and then we'd have an empty building with just one car sitting in the center. So, but it's kind of fun to pipe dream and talk about why, the reasons that you would like to have them. So mine are 3 pretty. They're very different, each of the cars.
So are mine.
So I guess start with your first one. What would be your?
So my first one, I could have swore we talked about it on the podcast that we did with me, like one of the first ones, but I think we shot it a couple times and talked about it once, and I don't know if it went in the episode that we released. But my grandfather was in a hot rod club in the 40s and 50s. It was called Custom Rods in like the Allentown area. They built 2 dragsters, front engine dragsters. One was on like a black iron pipe chassis that was super sketchy. They only raced it a handful of times and they scrapped it. The second one was a Linwood chassis that they built, had a flathead with 4 Strombergs on it. It was an Edelbrock intake, Edelbrock heads. One of these days I'd like to get my grandfather in and we're going to sit down and do a podcast because he was doing crazy hot rodding stuff before he went to Korea with the military. But that chassis apparently is somewhere in our area. It's apparently sold to an engine builder, which then got sold to a collector. I don't know what I'd ever do with a front engine dragster, but it would be really cool to track down the chassis just to have it and potentially put a front engine dragster together. My grandfather, unfortunately, never raced that car because they finished it and then he was deployed to Korea and the club didn't break up, but they parted the car out and sold it because for whatever reason. And I think they only raced it once or twice and then it was passed on. So there's a second part to it. My grandfather also had I believe it was a 40 pickup truck with an Olds in it. I remember him telling you the story before.
Yeah.
So he had a 40 pickup truck with a 303, 324 Olds. I can't remember what transmit. I think he said it had a 39 box behind it, and he used to break it all the time. So those 2 cars kind of go hand in hand together, or vehicles, because they were owned by my grandfather.
Yep.
They have some family history. Neither of them I'll probably ever be able to track down because the dragster potentially, but that stuff, it gets passed around so many times since the 50s. It's probably being raced now as a Linwood chassis by someone else, and I just don't. There's no way to track it down. So that's probably my most unobtainable of those two.
And that's not even money. It's just that it's,
Lost, especially the 40 pickup.
lost the time. And
Yeah, he doesn't know who he sold it to, and
does he have photos of the pickup anywhere?
he doesn't have photos of any of the stuff. Unfortunately, his basement flooded in like the early 90s when I was a little kid, and all of his photos got destroyed. He had like a water main break or something in his basement.
Wow.
And there was like 6 foot of water. All of his photos from when he was younger and everything got destroyed, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Matt actually has one of his car club plaques up on the wall.
For that club that he was in.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was that specific club, and I found it actually at a antique store for Matt, and then I showed my grandfather. He goes, "Oh, I was in that club." I was like, "Son of a!" He has an original plaque still, so I'm hoping.
He does.
I think he does, and one of his other club members. There's like a bunch of them that he's still friends with all those guys.
Wow.
I'm trying to track down a photo. One of the club members he doesn't really talk to anymore. It's kind of hard to deal with. Has photos of the dragster.
Wow.
So I'd love to try and become buddy with that gentleman to get photos, just to have them.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But doesn't matter how much money you have, finding that car or dragster would be more work than it is money to come across it. But that's a pretty lofty goal.
Yeah. I called the gentleman that bought the dragster from the club. He's still around. He's an engine builder in Pottstown. I called him and left a message. He did not return my phone call. So I got to call him a couple more times not to be overbearing, but kind of poke him a little bit to hopefully.
Or stop by and just chat with him. Yeah.
So what's the first one on your list?
So the first one on my list. So mine. None of my stuff. I don't have any historic or like family cars that I could think of. You guys heard my podcast. My father never really. He wasn't like a racer or anything. He had old cars, but nothing that he has really, struck a nerve with me, so to speak. So I kind of just picked like 3 cars that would be really cool to have. And I can't even say that I would keep them forever. It'd just be neat, lofty goals to have them.
Kind of scratches the itch.
Yeah, just a bucket list type cars. So the first one probably I would say is 50. Well, I should say 58 Caddies and 58 GM cars in general.
Yeah.
I really like. It's kind of oddball because 59 is more like the year, it seems like, with Caddies and Chevys and some of those that have the year. I kind of like the oddball 58s. I don't know why. The 4 taillights, 4 headlight kind of thing on the wall, some of them. But a loftier one would be the Cadillac Eldorado Baritz. 58 would be really cool. The Baritzes seem to be, and I'm sure the
Dan is super mad right now.
Yeah, the Cadillac nerds. I'm going to say some stuff that probably I'm not as educated as I'd like to be on them, but I admire those cars. But the Baritz cars seem to be, and I think the Bromes were kind of the same way. The styling on them was like almost like a year ahead. I know the Baritzes were like that, so it had like this awkward. They're kind of like, I don't know if they were coach built, but they kind of were. They were like factory custom. So like the 58 Baritz has like this fin that was added onto the back quarters, like let it in or whatever, that kind of doesn't look like it's supposed to be there, but kind of does. And it was like a year ahead because, the 59s have the huge fins that is like what everybody goes nuts for. The 58 Baritz has this little bit of a shark fin to it on each quarter that's kind of reminiscent of, it's what was to come. And the bumper and the fog lights in them and the everything's kind of like customized from the factory. And I always thought they were neat. They're really cool cars. They're big. They're just really, very, very Mad Men, esque. I love that show, and I loved all the, that aesthetic. And I'd love to someday have some high end, or more above average 50s car like that. That's just like big, and the styling is over the top, and so all the 58 to 60 GM products would be, I like a lot of early Fords, but when it gets into that era, I think GM was king.
Yeah, they had great styling.
Yeah, I just think the styling of a Cadillac or a Chevy, even the Olds and Pontiacs and all those, they had great styling. But for me, I've always liked Cadillacs, and that would be one that would be again that would be one that probably I don't think I necessarily could say I'd want to own one forever, but it would be a neat one to have and drive around
Yeah.
for a while. Convertible obviously would be really cool. And maybe they were convertible. I don't know that, but like we were looking, I looked just because I never even priced one. To be completely honest, I like when we go to Hershey and some of the different events, I admire them. I don't usually ever even look at what they cost, or it's in a show, and obviously you're not going to ask somebody what the price is, or I wouldn't do that. But
We get that all the time.
yeah. So like for instance, on Bring a Trailer, which is one of the better places to sell better cars right now, it seems like. A black, very nice, restored black Brits 58 went for $80,000 on Bring a Trailer. I don't know if that met the reserve. I believe that's what it went for. Yeah, so it sold for 58. So that is a good.
It's not terribly expensive, but it's considerably more than an early Ford.
Yeah, I mean you'd have to sell two. Probably right now with the early Fords probably being down a little bit in value, you'd probably have to sell two 32s to buy a nice one of them. But totally different car. It's just as big as if you put two 32s nose to tail.
Yes, you'd have to empty an entire slot in one of the bays upstairs here.
But I think one of those would be cool. Caddy engines, just run so good. The Caddies ride so nice. So something like that for me would probably be a pretty neat car to have. So that would be probably my first.
58, 59, they had like the big like 390.
I think 390 was
Yeah.
in that. They started getting into that, or it was 365.
The big ones, yeah.
But I think by the time they got to the late 50s, early 60s, they were getting into the 390s. So, and dual quads, you could get for a factory option, and the Batwing air cleaner and all that.
What color?
Stuff. I don't know because they look really. Normally on a 50s car, I like the very 50s. I call it bubblegum colors of the 50s. Like or
Like
candy
the
color.
pastels.
Yeah, like I really like those colors in a lot of cars, but this particular, the Brits, I almost feel like I like black. Like I don't know. There's like a silvery blue color that I've seen that's
Oh
pretty
yeah, I
cool.
think doesn't one of Dan's cars that light blue?
I don't know. But there's like a silvery blue I've seen that's pretty cool. GM had these this metallic, I forget the term for it now, but GM had a metallic color line that they used throughout that some of the neater, higher end cars got, and I think it's one of those that's pretty neat. But black just on that particular car just looks so classy that it's if we were talking about like a 50s Mopar, like a forward look car, definitely would rather have like a
One of the weird colors.
one of the cool colors.
Yeah. A black Cadillac also screams like presidential, like important, like very
Yeah.
high end.
And then some of the earlier 50s caddies, I would say some of the more bubblegum, for lack of a better term, that's what I call them, colors would be better. I think look a little better. But when it gets to that classy, just fancy kind of car, for me, that Barrett's, I think in black would be ideal. Can't say that I wouldn't. You'd have to see the car. I just haven't seen enough of them to know. But I definitely like not red for sure. Definitely not red.
I feel like any classy car looks better in black.
Yeah.
100%.
Silver, I'm not always a silver person, but I feel like silver on that car could look kind of cool if it was the right silver. But I think the black with all the chrome is such a contrast that I am partial to in general. Obviously, I have a handful of black cars, so that is one of my favorites. So that would be, for me, that's number one.
What's funny is I also picked a 60s GM car. I really like 60 Impala wagons.
Oh.
They're kind of
Look
odd.
that up.
A lot of actually, I already have a photo. I screenshot it. A lot of the 59 Impalas are like the thing, but I really like the way a 60 Impala wagon looks.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
They have a little bit of a different body line. They have gigantic windows. Obviously, I have a family, so owning a wagon like that, you put a modern drivetrain in it, you make it a little bit more drivable, air conditioning. You could drive across country with the family like back in the day. Put the kids on that seat that face backwards so they can make faces at traffic and stuff. It'd be really cool to have a neat family cruiser because someone in my family had like an 80s Impala wagon with one of those backward seats.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a kid sitting in that seat facing traffic, making faces and getting car sick because you're facing the wrong way.
Yep.
It'd just be super cool to have a family cruiser like that. You just hop in, go and drive. Not a huge fan of the everyone's going to say the Plymouth downstairs.
Well, the Plymouth might have started you on that path, maybe.
It might have, yeah. Well, I've always kind of wanted a wagon.
Right.
I don't need 10,000 projects. I'm not insane like Matt is.
So buying a nice one or one that's serviceable right from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, any of those, like you said, any of those GM products in the late 50s, early 60s, the wagons are all super cool.
Yeah.
The Buick wagons are rad.
Yep.
I mean,
Olds had it.
yeah, I'd take any of them. Any of that GM line probably I'd gladly take. But I really like the 60 Impala wagon, which is like the most popular one.
It's not a 59.
No, but I'm saying like everyone wants an Impala wagon.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but I think 60, 61, the price is probably a little more for it. But I like 60 because you get all the styling of a 59.
Yep.
But you don't have those taillights and the price tag maybe that comes with it. One of my buddies locally, one of our friends, has a body shop. And has been a nerd for that era of Chevys forever. So I've seen him rolling around 59, 60 Chevys and wagons.
What
for
was
years.
the wagon he finished? Was it a 59 wagon?
I think it was a 59 Brookwood or something like that. It was green and it sat right. It was killer car. So I've become more. I appreciate those cars more just because when you go to visit him his shop or see him driving around, he has those 59 to 62 or 64 even maybe Chevys he does a lot of. So it's kind of opens your eyes to them. But yeah, those wagons, you don't see them very often rolling around.
They're popping up a lot more now, obviously, because all the two-door stuff is so expensive.
Yeah.
A lot of the four-door and wagon stuff's coming out of the woodwork because they're more affordable, which is now driving the prices up because everyone wants them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to find one day, but if not, maybe I'll get one when I'm older for the grandkids.
Yeah, I mean they're obtainable. It's just
definitely.
the same idea of you have to pull the trigger on the right car. You don't want to buy one that's like needs to be
The whole floor needs to be
cut
replaced.
out and jigged up, and that's
I'd like to find a nice low mile one that just needs some sympathetic work. Mechanical restoration.
The nice thing is with what we do, there's a lot of times that we go to look at stuff. That one gentleman that's involved in the Boyertown Museum, we went to just visit his collection.
Oh, I forgot about that. What was that?
I think that was an Olds.
Yeah, that's right. It was like a 60 Olds, but it was a two-door or a four-door?
I don't remember, but it was totally random. He was showing us all his other stuff. He's like, "Oh, I own the house next door. Let me show you a car in this garage." And like next thing you know, Mike's asking the price, thinking about buying it. It's like, so it's a realistic thing that someday we might go to look at an estate and there's one of those wagons or
the state college place that we went to.
Oh yeah,
I mean there was
all kinds of 60s,
50s and
stuff.
60s stuff. That would have been perfect.
So matter of time. You're not in a hurry. We could come across something. And
I'm the opposite of Matt. I have 10,000 house projects going on at one time, or Matt has 10,000 car projects. So I don't need more distractions.
Exactly. So that's a good one. That's what do they? Do you have any idea what they're going?
I was trying to find. I'll have to look. If you talk about your next one, I'll find a one that's sold on Bring a Trailer.
I feel like they're in the
40 to 50.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say 50 to 60, but probably right for like a nice, really really nice one.
Like I said, 10, 15 years ago, they were probably pretty affordable, but I feel like the wagon thing has definitely gotten more popular, and with 60 coupes being so expensive, the wagons have gone up in price now too.
So my number 2 one is one that I've kind of thought was cool and always wanted since I was younger. So when I was in high school and my 20s, I was into the German car thing, real heavy. So there was some cars that were always, and everybody's going to say that, I was trying not to pick the stereotypical stuff that, yes, I would love to have, but probably emotionally isn't as exciting. So like, yeah, Porsche 356, or something like that, an early 911. It's very cool. Yes, I would love to have them. I almost did. There was a 90, I don't know if it was 90 or 90 to 92. Porsche did a Carrera that had a glass roof on it. That is very, very cool. And I remember my first apartment, I had photos of cars pinned on the wall because I didn't own any pictures. I just cut photos out of magazines and just literally would like thumbtack them to the plaster. And that there was a like ice blue or something it was called, Porsche with a glass roof 4S or so. I forget what it was. Carrera 4. I don't remember.
I have to interrupt this. I might be buying a wagon sooner than I thought.
There you go.
32,000. That's actually pretty
For a
cheap.
nice
Yeah.
one. Yeah, that's better than you thought.
Sorry. Continue your story.
There you go. Was it a Biscayne or was it a?
It is a Impala Nomad wagon. It's actually a pretty. I think Nomad's the highest
Might be.
trim level.
So, anyways, there's the Porsches and stuff like that. There's some good cars like that, but the car for me, this one might be a slightly because of emotional whatever. When I was younger, I remember like I started figuring out maybe in my early 20s that girls don't know the difference, most girls, on if you have a Mercedes or a BMW, they don't really know the difference if it's a piece of crap or it's like a brand new one. Of course they know a brand new Mercedes. Now it's a little different, but when I was younger, the cars didn't look as different as they do now. So it's like some of the Mercedes, they like an 80s Mercedes look kind of similar to some of the
For like 20 years, they all look the same.
They look very similar. So you could get away with having a 70s Mercedes that was rotted out but had okay paint, and I could drive it around. So like I did that game for a little while where I was I'd have some like Mercedes or BMW that I drove around daily, and when you'd be trying to like hang out with chicks, they're like, "Whoa, you have a Mercedes?" I had like $50 to my freaking name, but I looked cool because I had some wheels and a Mercedes and had leather interior. But
when I was a kid, there was people doing that with Audis.
Yeah,
they had like 90s Audis, and girls were like, "Oh, he's got an Audi." Like, it's a piece of shit Audi from the 90s. Would you stop?
Yeah. So when I was younger, learning all that, it was fun. But I stumbled across it. I don't remember how I got it, but I bought a like early Mercedes 190E. I think it was body style, if we're getting nerdy here, W201, I think it's called. But they made them from like the early to mid 80s all the way up into the 90s. And I had an earlier one that was pretty cool. But I used to go to junkyards like every other day. So I went to this junkyard in King of Prussia outside of Philadelphia. I used to work an office job at a high school out there.
You worked at a high school when you were a kid?
What's that?
You said, an office job out of high school.
Out of high school.
Sorry.
So I worked for a handful of years right out of high school. I got office jobs. And that's when I realized that I never wanted to work office jobs like ever again. So I worked some office jobs, and I worked in King of Prussia. So for anybody that's not familiar, King of Prussia has one of the biggest malls in the world in it. And it also has a crap ton of offices and businesses that are, running out of that area. And it's kind of like, in our area, a lot of people commute to there. So I had an office job, and there was also in the old part of King of Prussia, Conshohocken, there's some junkyards. So I used to go to a U-Pull junkyard. Like I would I'd bring extra clothes. I'd drive to to this junkyard in KOP and King of Prussia, and I would take off my dress shirt, my khakis, my dress shoes, and I would change out in the parking lot in my underwear, change into work clothes, and I'd go into the junkyard for my lunch break, and I would scavenge for parts. And this U-Pull yard got a lot of stuff from Philly that was towed in. It was like abandoned on the street or was stolen or whatever. There was a lot of interesting stuff that would come in there, and they had a high turnover of cars. So I used to literally go like almost every day or two times a week. I would go there and just pull parts, or I'd go and scout. And like if I went on a Wednesday and there was something killer, I would like either pull it then and then go back and wash up in the in the bathroom at the office, or I would like come Saturday morning at the when they opened. So I went when I had this Mercedes, and there was a 190E Cosworth edition. So the Cosworth edition, it was like the early 90s. At the end of that body style, they made a Cosworth edition. Was basically they were trying to do some sort of production racing where you had to make a production car, so many of them, and offer them to the public. So they made two versions of it. There was the Cosworth edition, which you would see in junkyards and see around a little bit, that was in America, that was, it had a little like body kit or fender kit on it and bumper kit. Had a little tiny wing, I think. But they had this kick-ass, usually black leather Recaro interior, like sports car interior, and they sat a little better wheels, and then they had this like 2.3 or 2.5 16-valve dual overhead cam performance engine, and they were stick shift. That was the other thing. Like a bunch of them were stick shift. Most Mercedes.
Yeah, it's very uncommon for a Merc.
Yeah, you almost never see a Mercedes that has stick shift, especially in that era. So it was just super cool. I think they had a dogleg transmission, some of them, so they're like a racing transmission. So, and then they had the Evo 2, which was like the race spec one that was like the big DTM wing. The more, even, I feel like the body kit was even more aggressive, and big front bumper, just like looked like a road rally car, or
like a cup car right out of the magazine.
Yeah, so cool. So for me, growing up, being into the European cars and European magazines when I was in high school and stuff, and my buddies and I, you'd open up a magazine or IronTrap or any of them, that car was like, holy crap. And to find them, you would see them occasionally, not the Evo 2s, because I think they were European only, possibly. But the Cosworth editions, you would see in the States every now and then. So for me to come across one in the junkyard, I pulled all the interior out of that car because it was smashed up, and I actually put it in my early 190E, and I had like Renault Racing magnesium race wheels on it that kind of looked like the DTM wheels on the Evo 2, and it had a little like Zender wing on it. It was just like lightly modified. It was my cheap version. It had like the stock engine in it.
Didn't that one have a hole in the floor?
No, that car was pretty nice. No, I had an earlier turbo diesel one that had a hole in the floor and the seat would sit crooked.
I got them mixed up.
Yeah, that was a 300 CTD or something. No, CD. So it was like a big two-door coupe hardtop with a diesel engine in it. It was pretty neat, but it had a rotten floor. And when I would take chicks, out or whatever, you actually would sit crooked where you would lean against the B-pillar, and they would be like, why am I sitting funny? It was like the foot of the seat was actually falling through, and the headrest would sit against the B-pillar. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think that seat cushion needs to be reupholstered. They didn't know any better. They were about to fall out of the car.
Yeah, don't put your foot there. Your foot's going to go through.
So, but that car, they've gotten quite valuable. Those Cosworth and the Evo 2s are like.
Did you ever see any Evo 2s when you were in Europe?
I went to the Mercedes Museum. So
I meant like in any of the junkyards and stuff.
No. That Evo 2 was like, that was super rare even then, because it was literally like the race prepped one. I don't know the figures off the top of my head how many they make, but I felt like there was like almost none of them.
I'll do some digging. I'll put the figures right here at the bottom if I can find it.
But the 2.3 Cosworths that we got in the States, those you used to see around a little bit. They made a bit of them, and you used to see them. And again, that's one of those cars. I feel like the old guys we talk to that are like, oh, I could have bought a 32 Ford for $200. I remember seeing crappy 911s, Mercedes Cosworths that I could have bought for $5,000, and it would have been a decent drivable car, and I could have just, if I would have bought one decent one and sat on it, they're now worth significantly more. But that's one that, like, if I had like crazy money and I was just looking to buy a car bucket list, I'd probably hold on to one of them because they're cool. They're a pretty cool car, and I think that would be neat. Being that they're stick shift and sporty, they're kind of fun to drive. Mm-hmm. That's the thing with a lot of the Mercedes. They're not really that sporty, so they're like driving big boats. So if I was gonna have a big boat car, I'll get a Lincoln or something like that I like the styling more. But this car has that square, boxy, aggressive look that I like of the 80s and 90s European sports cars. So I think it would be a fun car to drive.
Yeah.
It'd handle better, all that stuff. So that's probably my one European car off the top of my head that I thought of. So
Yeah, my next one is also an import. Matt grew up with European stuff. I grew up with Japanese and Asian imports. I was a big Nissan head for a long time. I had a 240SX for, I don't know, 5 years. Obsessed with early Skylines. So like a 70 Skyline coupe, not the fastback, regular coupe would be an absolute dream. They're super small, so they're like go-karts. Put an obnoxious engine in it. Would be super fun. I just love the way that they're styled. They, guys put 13s or 14s, like super small wheels on them, big offset. I love the way that they look. I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate for liking those imports, but I love the way they look. I'd love to own one. Definitely cannot afford one. I just looked on Bring a Trailer, and they're bringing like $150,000 to $200,000.
yeah, that market has skyrocketed.
Yeah, they've gotten super popular. They're really easy to import if you find them in Japan. It's just that's a way left field distraction I definitely do not need, because if you know anything about 70s to 90s Japanese cars, they rust really poorly. So I can only imagine the rust repair that one of those would need. Floors, all that stuff.
We'd have to find a really nice one in Japan and ship it over and still have a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that market has gone crazy. So that one probably was obtainable when you were first into them.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And now they're like crazy money. So
yeah, everyone really likes the R32s to 34s, that era of Skyline, but I prefer the much earlier stuff. I think they look way cooler. I just like the styling a lot more.
Yeah, I know before when I was kind of starting to stray in different cars other than European stuff, I like I remember looking at the 70s like Toyotas and some of the bigger, they had like a Cressida.
Yeah.
And it was like a big luxury Toyota from the 70s, but they were like kind of cool, and we didn't really get many of them here, but people were importing them, and like those I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like a really fancy, boxy Japanese
I like the early Datsuns too. The 510 is their coupe, which is like small, like a Model T, like the free T. It's just super tiny and not very big, and they just look so cool,
those
modified.
Those I remember.
Well, we got them in the States.
Yeah, I remember them.
They're all destroyed and rotted to shit, because early Datsuns were notorious for being rotten.
Yeah, so those cars, I remember those. Nissans, I don't remember. Like, I don't remember in the junk. I remember the early 300 ZXs.
Yeah.
Seeing them in junkyards. But even the 240s, like, I don't really remember seeing them hardly ever in a junkyard when I was going, when those cars were they were normal cars. They weren't like sought after. So the 240s, I don't remember seeing them very often in junkyards, but the 300 ZX, for whatever reason.
Well, the 300 ZX, they made
a lot of them.
Well, they made them in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So like the 240 SX didn't come out till 89.
Yeah, but I was going to junkyards in the late 90s to early 2000s when I started driving.
Because they were probably all rusty and junky by then.
You would think people smashed them up, or I would have saw more of them, but I don't. Maybe they just didn't click in my head. A 300 ZX and a 240, the earlier 280 or whatever they were.
280Z was Datsun, yeah.
Yeah, like those cars, maybe because they were more sporty looking, they would have.
True, yeah.
They would have drawn my eye, but I don't remember the ones that everybody wants now. I don't remember seeing them.
Yeah, much. Nobody wants a 300 ZX from the early 90s.
Or like the early Celicas that we got from like the early 80s. They were like hatchback, kind of long nose. Like some of those cars were, you would look at them and be like, oh, that thing looks like,
What's
I'm not into it.
Hilarious is they were like worth nothing.
Yes.
When you and I were kids, and now they're like, everyone is hunting them, and they're worth $30,000 to $40,000, and you couldn't sell them for jack shit back then.
I remember my brother had, because he's like 7 years older than me, my brother had rotary. He had a first gen Mazda RX-7, one or two of them, and then he had a second gen, I think, turbo model. RX-7, and I remember him having those early rotary cars, and they were just, he bought them because they were cheap, and they were like, you could make them go like stink, but like he had those, and I remember he was a bit older than me driving those, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then now, as an adult, looking at what that stuff's going for, I'm like, whoa, like
They're so stupid.
that's like crazy. And like his buddy had his high school friend had I think it was a twin turbo 300 in the 90s.
Yeah. Yep.
Were they all-wheel drive too? No, that's the Mitsubishi.
That's a 3000 GT. No,
Yeah.
they were rear-wheel drive, but they were.
Yeah, he had the Nissan, and it was the twin turbo one,
Yep.
and it was just like
I think
stupid.
they came out like 92 or 94, something like that. But yeah, they were crazy fast. But all the 70s, for whatever reason, all the 70s like Japanese cars had like really just cool styling. I just love the way that they looked.
Yeah, I think they were. There was a stigma against them being junky Japanese cars when I was younger, kind of, and there was only really the kids that were going after the normal Honda Civics and stuff like that. You didn't see people going to the left field very often, getting some of the other stuff, and like driving a Toyota Celica was not like cool. It was like if you had a Honda Civic or a variation of that was cool.
Yeah, the Hondas were always the thing everyone, especially when I was a kid, everyone wanted to own a Honda.
They had those, but now you start looking and you're like, oh, those weird models were actually kind of neat. And yeah, I could definitely, I should have picked a Japanese car because I probably could think of a few that were cool that could have went on my list, but I didn't. So
Yeah.
we would have been here for like 3 hours talking about.
Yeah, we only made it to 2 and we're at like 40 minutes.
Well, my top one is one that I've been This is a real like one I've been lusting after. So
And you've had a chance to buy 2 of them?
there was one that I almost bought. I thought I was going to be able to buy, and it was a junky one.
Oh, was the other one not a convertible? The one that you missed at the auction? Was that a convertible?
That was a 32. I don't think I would have. That started us on our route of doing what we do. But as far as owning, I've been wanting for a while. I'd really like to have a Packard. So a 37 Packard is kind of the year for me. That would be. I like other years. I would definitely stray 32 to 37.
Because 37 is the last year of floor shifts, like
I believe so. Yes.
Cav LaSalle's.
Yeah. So a 37 LaSalle is just like that's for me is like the pinnacle of their styling. Of course, I always seem to steer towards the most expensive crap. So the ones that me over the past 10 years, educating myself and looking at photos and just kind of pipe dreaming, I was like, oh, that one looks really cool. And I look at it as like, oh, I like the 12s. Okay. 12s are the most expensive ones. And
the best taste.
yeah. Oh, I like convertible, 2-door convertibles. So you could, with Packards and the fancier cars, it's like you see tons of the 4-door, the touring cars or the Phaetons or convertible sedans, whatever the name of that model is. But 4-door convertibles, I don't really love them that much. They're cool. I would like a 2-door convertible coupe, whatever they call it. So like right now, Mike always laughs when he looks sometimes at my watch list on eBay.
Not even the watch list. When you open eBay, it shows you like your recently viewed.
Oh, we should do an episode on like what are you watching on eBay right now?
Yeah, that's true.
That would be kind of a fun one to do.
But like the other day, we talked about this topic, and then like an hour later, I go on eBay to respond to someone or list something, and then the recently viewed is just all Packards because Matt has a saved search, so he just was like, I wonder what's for sale recently, and went on like 15, looking at 15 different listings.
We're like a married couple because we could see each other's email account and eBay listings and Facebook page and all that stuff, so we're
not serious enough. I haven't gotten the bank account details yet.
Not yet.
We haven't been married that long yet.
But so there's been this one that's been for sale for a while now. There's
Is that orange or
reddish?
reddish?
Yeah. And so, but a 37 Packard 12.
Is the styling that much different between 12 and 8?
Not a ton, but I feel like the 12s, there was some coach built models that are better. I don't know this particular, like this one says model 1507-1039. I'm sure to a Packard restoration guy that means something. To me, I'm not sure, but it's a coupe roadster, which I like. They got the real long front end with a little bit shorter of a body, and it just looks...
The grills are so amazing on
Yeah,
that.
so a 37, but this one's a Packard 12 coupe roadster. It's got the dual spares, which I actually like. Like on the Fords, a 32 roadster, I think it looks dorky. Like, I don't really like it. But when you get into the big cars, Cadillacs, LaSalle's, Packards of
It's
that
much
era,
more fitting, 100%.
yeah, even Lincoln's, the fancier Lincoln models
Yeah.
of that era when Ford owned them, but they were doing the better ones, the K series, I think it's called. But a 37 Packard coupe roadster would be ideal. This particular one is it's being sold by like a consignment, shop.
That can't be an original Packard color.
I don't know. It's this goldish copper color, but some of these like special models were like weird colors.
That's
I
true.
think. But this car has a rumble seat in it.
Actually has a nice color combination. I like the
Yeah.
dark brown interior, but it has a tan, is it a tan roof?
Yeah, the tan cover. I don't know if they have a photo with the roof up. I really don't think that the roof looks good up on these cars.
Well, the roof's probably never been up, so they probably didn't want to fold it up.
Yeah, but like this car they're asking $5,000 short of $300K.
It's not $300K.
It's not $300K. There is a make an offer button. I could hit that right now and see if they would take $30,000. Yeah, this car, it's just really, really elegant. And this particular, 37 is just a good year. I just like the styling. The other thing is the higher end models, the 8s and the 12s, they have better dashboards.
Yeah.
Like for Packard, I don't know why. Packard completely changed their dashboards. And I guess a lot of other companies did back then. But the fancier models got it wasn't just that they changed the face of the gauge. They totally different
I don't know if you can see
dash. But above my head is a better Packard gauge panel.
it. Usually the base models were like early Ford. They had one, like a speedometer and then a multi-gauge. They usually had like two gauges. And then the 8s had more. And then you get to the 12s and they had like, is that an 8 or a 12 above you?
I forget.
But it's got like 10 gauges in it.
But that particular dash that's above my head, that only came in the 8s and 12s, the better ones. And you guys know, we did the 32 Roadster recently, and that was 33.4 Packard gauges, and they were V12 only because of the face of the one. But the 8's got a similar gauge. So whatever reason, the dashes and gauges were out of this world.
And steering wheels too.
And steering wheels on the higher end models, and I think that that's part of what makes me want those better cars, because I look at other ones where there's a similar body style, but the dash is super boring comparatively. So
And the 6s.
yeah,
The car looks almost identical. The hood's slightly shorter. The grill's the same. Then you get to the dashboard, it's that doesn't do it at all.
yeah. So I'm not saying if I got the right deal on a 6, but for me, that would be the car that it would be worth maybe later in life if I just want to simplify my life, getting rid of a number of cars, and you would have that would be your fancy car. And at that point, I'm going to be old, so I'm not impressing any chicks. And, well, maybe you can impress younger chicks, but I'm not really impressing chicks. I'm only going to be impressing older chicks.
Yeah, exactly. The
So
same age.
It's not going to work like the Mercedes thing when I was younger. But
No.
for me,
I think those days are past, buddy.
yeah, they might be. So for me, that car would be, it. And those are definitely color and everything specific. I wouldn't have thought that gold copper color would have done it on that car if you just said that, but it really works on that particular car. I don't know why. So that would be really, really cool. That's a good example of our podcast that we did last. I'd probably have to modify one. I'd love to just make the convertible roof on those a lot of times is where they fall short. When you put the top up,
Not just those. Any 30s car,
a lot of them. Yeah.
there's very few that have a good convertible top from the factory.
Yeah.
They're almost all square and frumpy. There's very few that have a nice,
Yep.
subtle sweep to them.
And some of the Darren Packards are really good too because they came with like factory Duval windshields.
Yeah.
So like I didn't know the model off the top of my head, but like a 37-ish Darren convertible, something like that. That one, what was that one that we did the video on?
Oh, that was a 40.
40, but it was
Rolston.
a Rolston bodied. So like again, whatever stupid reason, I always lean towards like if I was, the Rolstons and the different models that are coached.
Those names come with like an extra zero added to the cost, right?
But like something like that, one of these cars, that would be the only way that maybe I'd own a lower end model is if it was one that was affordable enough that I could modify it and maybe put a Duval type windshield on it to give it that Rolston look, and I could customize it a little bit. But
set of skirts a little bit lowered.
A lot of them have skirts already, luckily.
From factory.
So you could just lower them a little bit, get more of that boat stance to it. You're starting to see it in the custom world. Some of the higher end custom guys are starting to buy Caddies, LaSalle's, cars that were old restored cars, and then they're lightly customizing them. They're lowering them a little bit or bagging the rear, chopping the convertible top irons to just, not even the windshield, just taking the bump out of the back of the roof to make it flow more. And then all of a sudden the car's like, it was beautiful before, but now it's like spot on. So like a car like that, that's the only thing I could see myself doing. Maybe you modify or make new top irons to drop the roof a little bit.
And it's not even really the irons; it's more the bows.
Yeah,
like
true.
the wooden bows are just so frumpy. You have to.
Yep.
It's usually the middle one you just shorten and it just takes that box out of it.
It's a kind of the same idea. Like if you don't follow Rob Ida, I feel like everybody in the world follows Rob because he's amazing. But Rob has recently been doing modifications to Jaguars and Corvettes, early Corvettes that are 100% bolt-on reversible modifications. So he has a Jag right now, an early Jag that he's doing, that he's making like this tonneau cover out of metal that looks like it's an old race car, and he's doing some add-on pieces that totally changes the look of the car. But the car's all of it's reversible, all of it's bolt-on. He did a Corvette for a customer that they did a metal tonneau cover like that. Just looks so good. So like same idea, like maybe you just lower the bows and it's the wood, and you could get bows made or modify them, and the roof would look better. Or you make a Carson top.
Ooh, and one of those with a Carson top.
Yeah, you take the original convertible top off, you put it in the corner. If you ever sell it, it's there. And you make a Carson top that bolts on to all factory locations, but now it has that padded convertible top. Like for me, that's how I would love to play with one of those cars. It would be super cool. And it doesn't take much to make them look amazing. So I guess what I'm saying is I would take an expensive car and fuck it all up. Is what everybody else would think of.
That's basically all the cars that we talked about so far is us buying an expensive car. I don't know if you're doing it. Would you do anything to the Caddy though?
Caddy, I don't think. Well, actually, my two cars, the other two cars, I don't think they need much of anything. Like a Caddy, the Barrett sits kind of low from the factory, so like maybe I would change the suspension a tiny bit, or that would be a kind of cool car to lay out and bag it, like But like the 190E, the Cosworth or the Evo 2, maybe lower them, but I don't think those cars from the factory need much of anything. Maybe. Like the U.S. Cosworth car probably had kind of quiet exhaust. So I'd straight pipe the motherfucker.
The synopsis is you would probably end up having to fuck them up.
Yeah, I guess you're right. The more I talk.
You're like, well, it could probably be a little bit lower and louder. And yeah, I'd modify it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, here we go. Slippery slope.
Yeah. And they're kind of cool, but these are the things that I would do differently.
Yeah, so I guess nothing is safe now.
No, nothing is
what we're saying. But like that Packard is one, like, now when we're going to Hershey, and last year we went to the Hershey auction that they have, that's at one of the hotels. They have the cars on display, and, like, I'm starting to think, I couldn't afford a $300,000 car, but, like, I'm trying to go and see what I like and look at. So future me, maybe when I'm older, that would be the thing where
or we just come into an estate where there's one that we could buy.
True.
That's a quote-unquote affordable, but it needs work.
Well, yeah, I'm educated. I mean, all of this stuff with pipe dreaming, I think you should be educating yourself because If you're interested in it and you're looking, if you stumbled upon a deal on one, and this is true with early Fords. If you want a 32 Ford, educate yourself on the differences between a Brookville and a, everything else, so that if you just happen to stumble across a Facebook ad and you're the first one that emails the person, you get the first shot. You might have a chance at buying a car that you never thought you could own, but you need to educate yourself. So like the Packards, I've been trying to educate myself on some of these small differences that is tens of thousands of dollars in difference in value. You don't want to pay 12 money for a Junior when it comes to the Packards.
Look, you know the model names and everything.
Yeah. You're going to be very disappointed because the 6-cylinder cars with the Packards don't have the value, don't hold the value of the 8s and the 12s. So like I'm just trying to educate myself, because if I happen to stumble upon I don't think it was last year, it was maybe the year before, there was like a barn find 37 or 8 Packard convertible sitting there, and the price on it I looked at was like, wow, that's like in a range that I could, maybe sell some cars and afford. And then I realized it was a 6. And, at that moment I was like, oh shit, maybe I should call the guy. We walk around at night after dinner in the car corral at Hershey, some of us, and eat ice cream and just look at cars, and it's one of our fun things we do at Hershey every year. So like this car, we're in the dark looking at it, and I'm like, my phone light, and I'm like, man, maybe I should call this guy. And then I like realized that it was a 6, and I'm like, okay, well actually what he's asking is, on the money or a little high for a 6. And it's like, so if I wasn't educated,
You might have pulled the trigger.
and then got it home and everybody's like, ooh,
You overpaid for that.
You paid way too much. So got to be careful of that stuff.
Would you say out of your 3, would you say the Packard is the one that you're most, not actively, but would be the most interested in obtaining first?
I think it's the least obtainable currently dollar-wise.
Well, yes, but if you had the option,
yeah,
that would be the one you would find first.
Yeah, and that was a close second was a Lincoln K model of the same vintage, 32 to 7 or 32 to 5 or somewhere in there. The K models, same deal, either a 3-window or a convertible coupe.
3-window, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, so that era of Lincolns, the K models, which is totally different than the Zephyr. People think of it like it's a Zephyr or something. No, the K model was like the coach built or fancy ones that they continued through the years. So even after Ford took over, they were making the K models, and there was the Zephyr, and everybody thinks the Zephyr was the top model. Actually, if you look on the brochure, there was the K models, and they were the really fancy ones, the limousines, and again, they were like Rolston. Some of them were Rolston bodies, and so that 32 to 5 K models are also in that same range of over $100,000. Beautiful cars. If I could come across one of them, that would be super cool as well, because it also fits the Ford motif. But the Packards, for some reason, something about owning a Packard. I've always liked the concept. I don't know if I want to get involved in the Packard world of
Parts and stuff.
but I'd like to have. Maybe having one would be neat. So I'd have to buy one that would be pretty complete.
Parked right here.
Yeah, it would be super cool. And Moon could not ride in it. I would have to have separate clothes to ride in it, because everything I own
And
now.
shoes.
And shoes. But it would be super cool. But that's...
So definitely in the comments down below, leave your top 3 cars that if you had unlimited funds or had the ability to buy, what would you pick? And what do you think of our 3 that we picked? I'm sure we'll get lots of hate for liking imports, but it's okay.
Yeah, I think, there's always, everybody's going to disagree, but this is always fun in the comments, especially on Facebook, people kind of conversing back and forth on what they'd like to have or why you'd like to have it. And I think there's a lot of people that probably on their list might be a car much like something that your grandfather had, where it's a emotional connection of getting it back. It's not that it's unobtainable dollar-wise. It's more just having that piece of history back would be really cool. But it's been a really fun one. Thank you guys for listening and or watching. Again, make sure you're subscribing on the audio format on Spotify and all those different outlets, so that you can listen to all of these, because we're doing one a week now on the audio side, and we're doing just these visual ones like every other week. So thank you guys for following along. Appreciate it. Catch you later.